Hi, a very good evening to all of you who have tuned in live. My name is Prashant. I am a developer advocate with Google Cloud. But tonight, I'm going to host this fireside chat with Will Grannis.
Sure.
Will Grannis is Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Google Cloud. Will, with his team of tech executives and senior engineers, works hand in hand with some of our largest customers. And in this talk, we're going to hear from Will about his career journey. We're going to hear about some of the trends that he's been seeing in the world of generative AI and cloud computing. And we're also going to try get some advice out of Will from a career point of view. So without further ado, Will, thank you for being here. Welcome. And it's really great to have you here.
Thanks, Prashant. It's great to be here with you. Thanks, everybody who is online with us here tonight. And look forward to this conversation. I appreciate all of you because you're doing the great thing out there, which is building the future. So really just an honor and a privilege to be with all of you.
Awesome. Will, I heard this is your first time in India?
It is. So? It is.
Awesome.
I have to tell you, from the moment I got off the plane to this moment right now, a couple of reflections. Number one, this is such a welcoming country. The teams for everywhere, like the nicest people at the airport. So you have to remember, I live in the United States. Not always the nicest people. Sorry for those of you who might staff the airport. I'm not talking to you specifically. I'm talking to the other people. Not always the friendliest environment. From that moment all the way to this, meeting with the teams today, getting a chance to go see what we're putting on here at IO Connect tomorrow and all the teams supporting us over there. Just really, really incredibly welcoming. So I can't, while I don't want to leave, I can't wait to be back.
Awesome. Yeah, I do wish you come over more frequently, but you couldn't have chosen a better time to be in India. This is just the onset of the monsoons. It's a very pleasant weather in Bengaluru. And yes, thanks for being here for the first time. I would like to extend a warm, from a hospitality point of view, welcome to you to India.
Oh, well, thank you.
So Will, we spoke about what you do for our customers, with our customers. Maybe let's get started with what you do for yourself. How do you consume information? Do you read? Have you been reading any books of late? Have you been listening to any podcast?
Sure. Well, something I've learned over a very long career is I'm never done learning. I think I have a deep paranoia that surfaces quite often that there's something that I'm missing, or there's something more I could do, or there's a way I could show up better as a leader. And so I'm always looking to consume information, learn from others. This is actually one of the big reasons why I'm here in India, because second largest developer community in the world, and in terms of entrepreneurs who are really building the future around their ideas, I think 2 or 3 in the world. So I'm here to learn. Now, when I don't have the privilege of being with all of you and learning directly, I guess a couple of sources. First, podcasts. So during COVID and the pandemic, I think we all saw podcasts grow quite a bit. And a podcast I've been listening to for a while is Masters of Scale.
Okay.
Reid Hoffman. Basically entrepreneurs sharing their lessons from their journeys, which has been really great. And then Thinking Fast and Slow, which is Daniel Kahneman. And this work is about how do you balance decision making and bringing in data and acting on data, but also the pitfalls of acting on intuition. And if you think about what I do as a technologist, we don't always have the data about what's going to work in a certain market or in a certain use case. So we have to balance all the time the having the data and informing us what to do, but also where do we take a chance and take risk.
Awesome. Good to hear that. I hope the audience made a note of what Will listens to and reads these days. So from here, Will, I just want to go into, let's go into your early career, right? Okay. And I know that you did not start your career in technology.
I did not.
Yeah. So what was your earlier career? How did it look like? What brought you into technology? And how did you land up at Google Cloud?
Oh, okay. So it's been a long, winding road. And I think that's one of the amazing things about technology is that it's not just limited to one career path. You can find your way to technology in so many different ways. In my way, my first career, I was in the military. So I was an Army captain and with an undergrad in mathematics. Now, fortunately, that degree in mathematics was also centered around linear algebra and statistics. So you can imagine as soon as machine learning became popular again, right? Because it comes in kind of waves. that really helped me a lot. So I was also a little bit lucky rather than completely able to read the future. And when growing up, I was very interested in technology. Gaming was kind of how I started. So pulling apart Ataris, pulling apart Intellivisions, pulling apart anything I get my hands on, because I thought it was just really incredible that you could write software that would create a world that others could disappear into and solve problems. They could entertainment for hours on end. And it got really hot in Arizona where I grew up in the summer, so it was nice to have an indoor activity. And so after kind of taking that, and plus the military, where I learned a lot about leadership, I learned a lot about taking the initiative, because quite often the plans that you came up with, they kind of fell by the wayside. And combining that, then I had a chance towards the end of my military career to start working in technology directly, but on hardware. So I was programming digital signal processors for L-band satellite transceivers. So this was in the early 2000s, and mobile satellite communications was really starting to take off. And so my first job was learn about telecommunications, because I had no idea how to program a DSP. And that pattern repeats itself over the course of my career, where I didn't really know all the things I needed to know coming into the role. But I had a leader that was willing to take a chance on me, and I had enough of a foundation and willingness to learn to get into it. So I quickly rose to become a product manager, which then got the attention of some big companies. I went to Boeing, which is a super large aerospace company. I spent a lot of time in their research and development org. And then I started my own company, because that's what you do when you're on the precipice of creating this very great career for yourself, is you go blow it all up and start your own company. And I was really passionate about an idea around open source analytics. And taking that path was really critical, because at that point now I had a little bit of a balance. I'd been in a couple small companies, my own and others, and I had been in some large companies. So fast forward a little bit and kind of skip some of the interim steps. I ended up at Google because one day I was a CTO of a public company, and we were trying to analyze media events. It's called the GDELT database. And this was just a massive database of all the media events kind of going on around the world, and it was really hard to analyze them in an economical and methodical way. It was going to cost us around $4 million to get an answer to one question.
Wow, that's a lot.
That was not going to fly. And then my Amanda, our data scientist at the time, brought this idea to me that we just take this data and we load it into this web UI called BigQuery. Very new at the time. So this is the mid 2000s. And roughly 2012, sorry. And I saw the magic of what BigQuery could do, and I got really excited. I called a friend at Google and I said, "What are you all planning to do with this?" And they said, "We're going to bring it to enterprises." And I said, "Sign me up." So I said, "I don't care what job I have. I don't care if I'm an individual contributor. Give me a computer and give me a corner," which is actually where I started, of a shared office cubicle, and I'll figure it out from there. Because I saw not only the amazing technology, but then the people I got to interact with sealed the deal for me on Google.
Awesome. That's a really exciting journey. Are you going to be writing a book about this?
I don't know. We'll see how tonight goes.
Awesome. You've been here for 8 years. 8 years, more than 8 years now?
More than 8 years, yeah.
What's your favorite part about being at Google Cloud?
So if you love technology and you love engineering, it's a hard place to be. So let me explain. You can work on products and services that impact the daily lives of billions of people every single day. You can also build technology that allows companies and organizations and governments to serve their citizenry and serve their customers at scale. And I'll tell you, the spirit of service has always been really important to me. I think it's why I joined the military in the first place. And it's what really invigorates me about Google and our ethos. Because if you think about Google's mission, right, bringing information together and really unlocking its value, and then you think about Google Cloud's mission, which is about creating the platforms and the technology to allow all businesses and all organizations to benefit from those same technologies, it's really a spirit of service. And so for me, the ability to work on such a broad set of things, chip design, check. Quantum, check. Cybersecurity, check. Scaled computation, generative AI, it doesn't matter. If you like technology, I can't imagine a better place. And then you add the service mentality. I mean, you have it. Everybody I work with has it. that really resonates with me personally.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Being here for a while, that really hits home, what he said. You spoke about being at startups. You worked at a startup. You also founded your own startup.
I did.
If I remember what you said right. You mentioned India being home to one of the largest number of developers in the world. We're also home to the third largest startup ecosystem in the world.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure there are a lot of folks from the startup ecosystem listening to us right now. Why don't you talk a little bit about your journey at these startups? What does it mean to be at a startup versus being at a large enterprise? And what kind of benefit does cloud, or why should startups be adopting cloud? How can it help them grow? How can it help them scale?
Well, so a couple of things, and I can kind of hear in the question too a little bit of a premise of like, how do you choose as an individual which path you take? You know, do you go and do a startup? Do you go to a large company and innovate within that structural framework? And so the trade-offs that I think about and have thought about in my career and how I've approached it, one is if you want to go into one problem area and go super deep, and you want to know all the things, you want to know about engineering, you want to know about product, you want to know about go-to-market, you want to know about PR. Small companies, there's no place better to learn the end-to-end parts of a business than in a startup. And candidly, coming out of a big organization like the military and my first job being a startup was crucial. Looking back, and at the time I didn't realize, but looking back now, it was crucial to my career because I saw the interconnectedness of what I was doing in technology to business. I saw the interconnectedness to the customer experience. And so, that's one element on choosing, kind of career path. Another one is in large companies, you often get the chance to work at a scale that a startup just can't match. And imagine there aren't, a bevy of startups that are serving, billions of people with, many, many products all over the world on a daily basis. And so that again, is very interesting to me to not only dive deep into one problem, but also work across problem sets and look for horizontals. So the sustainability is a really great one where it doesn't matter which vertical or industry I'm working in, it doesn't matter which technology area I'm working in, that horizontal, the thought of ensuring a more sustainable planet and technology ecosystem, that's a problem set that allows me to work anywhere on anything, and that's the kind of problem that we would work on here at Google.
Awesome. And do you think cloud has a big role to play in startups in agility, in moving fast?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was so when I was working in my startups. The number one blocker is you want to continue evolving and growing at a rapid clip. But if you're bound by your procurement rules, or you have to go buy servers, or you have to go buy network, or you have to stitch together this. And by the way, you're usually doing it a little bit at a time, not in big bulk buys. So now you have this diversity of servers that you purchased, chips that are in those servers. You probably have multiple generations. That creates so much complexity in the operations and maintenance. And when you're a small company, you can't afford to go down for a second, right? Because you're all about being available today in our digital world. So cloud, in a lot of ways, and in its purest form, is really a way to scale an idea that is bound only by an imagination. The global computer available to individuals at a moment's notice. And AI is especially generative AI, is a really good example of this, which is, if you're at a startup, you get to see parts of the problem. So maybe you're building a foundational model, or maybe you're providing a service that tunes prompts, or maybe you're building kind of a SaaS, enabled solution. Whereas like in Google Cloud, we get to see all of those activities because customers are moving across all those activity chains and deploying their software using a range of tools that go from processor and compute shapes to the pipelines, the data pipelines, and the management of machine learning models, all the way out to deploying it in a marketplace and making it available for other people.
Awesome. That sounds exciting.
It is.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned, right, in terms of the having to be agile and having a global compute available at a moment's notice, that's really important if you want to be agile, if you want to move fast. You did also mention about generative AI. You spoke about the machine learning pipelines. You're working with a lot of startups as well as large customers. What are some of the industry trends that you're seeing?
Well, generative AI, first off, acknowledging it's early days for that particular set of technologies, whereas machine learning, as I mentioned earlier, depending on how you define AI, as a statistician, cluster algorithms have been around for a long time. K-means and other ways of managing data and analyzing data have been around for a long time. So AI as a discipline has been around for a while, but generative AI is kind of this new form. And so I'm going to couch, kind of what's happening for Gen AI, whereas in ML and AI, it's much broader. Yeah. So Gen AI, first, we live in a time where people are starting to really gravitate to a conversational interface that feels like a personalized AI for them. Mm-hmm. And over the last 6 months, that has really become apparent that, markets and populations and individuals and companies, they want these types of conversational capabilities laid over the top of almost any application or service you can imagine. So, one of the trends that we see is over time, moving from these kind of static web pages and having to scroll through a bunch of things to, conversational interfaces, even over, a company's website or even over their internal data for knowledge management. Mm-hmm. And now that is encouraging more and more people, to both, work on generative AI, but it's also kind of creating a new value proposition where you don't necessarily have to have a computer science degree from a top 5, university to go and start tuning large language models. And so it's also democratized participation in ML. And not just ML kind of like in what it generates, but also, now you can use prompts for tuning and prompt tuning. And so it's opening up entirely new categories of job skills as well. Another trend that we're seeing, and we've been speaking about this a little bit here today, and that's sustainability. Okay. And this is not just from a carbon emissions, alternative sources of power, but also in how we construct generative AI. It's kind of like BigQuery is a really amazing. I think I've already revealed myself as a BigQuery fanboy here on the live stream. But one thing that happens with BigQuery is if you don't think about your query structure that you're entering into BigQuery, sometimes you can cascade it over a large set of data unnecessarily, and that's actually wasteful as well. I think we're going to see more of that type of mentality make its way into AI, especially generative AI, because to run inference and to cycle these models is actually a computationally intensive thing, which means not only cost from a dollars perspective and from a labor hours perspective, there's also an energy perspective. Right. So one of the other trends that I think we'll see over the next 5-ish years is people really being thoughtful about the efficiency of how they're bringing generative AI to their products and services. And maybe the last overarching trend that is pretty interesting that I see is now a lot of companies that used to be more business to business are now becoming direct to consumer. So the digital journey and the non-digital journey are starting to blend a little bit. And generative AI has created like a junction box, if you will, where a conversational interface now is the junction point between a digital set of kind of experiences, offers, processes, but also it's pretty easy now to lay a conversational interface over, let's say you're in the automotive industry. Traditional model says you sell automobiles through a dealer, through a network, and this is all how it works. Now, we've seen some car companies already disrupting the model by going direct to consumers. But now more automobile companies can do that because of generative AI and how approachable this technology is and how quick it is to deploy.
Awesome. Opens up a lot of new opportunities and avenues.
It's a great time to be a dev.
You mentioned a few things, right? I think these are some of the core values that we believe in. Sustainability is something that you mentioned. So we do consider ourselves, among one of the cleanest clouds. Mm-hmm. We also have strong beliefs about AI ethics and using AI responsibly. Let's start with the AI side of things first. Yeah. How do we help businesses adopt AI responsibly? What can we do as Google Cloud?
Yeah. Well, and for any of you that are, out there today and you're wondering, wow, it seems like there's a lot going on and, it's all coming very quickly and it's hard to keep up with. One, it's hard for me to keep up with. As a CTO of an organization of this span and what we do, you mentioned sustainability and responsibility, just those two topics. I could spend all my time diving into both of those. Mm-hmm. and not be as deep as I'd like to be in both those topics. So, I'll share with you kind of a thumbnail sketch, but my best advice would be if you find a problem set that you're really, really passionate about, so far we've been talking a little bit about like technology first and then like how it fits into problems. If I rewind the clock, it's really when I've been focused on a problem that I care the most about that I find the technology to go and solve the problem. And, like the GDELT database was an example of, we weren't like approaching it from which technology do we need to use. It was like we had to do a thing and we had to do it within a certain envelope and cost. How do we find something that can help us do that? So on the, on the AI side and on the AI principle side, one thing that we've learned is that we've been at this for 6-7 years now. I think in 2018 we published our AI principles, but there were years before that where we were deploying machine learning at scale, in search and billions of people every single day, and you learn a lot about limitations. But you only learn that through experimentation and deployment. So in addition to like finding a problem that you really care about, I'd also encourage you when you're not sure, to try something. An example is, I'm really a big believer that machine learning will push out to the edges and will be more distributed. It won't just be in these big massive data centers that are around the globe. But I wanted to see what it would take to take a machine learning model and move it from a laptop and a regional instance and a big data center and move it on to a microcontroller. And so I went to edX and I signed up for a tiny machine learning class, just like any of you would. And of course, we have all the experts at Google, but you don't really, if you really want to know the nuances, sometimes you just got to roll your sleeves up. And it turns out that there are a lot of steps to take a model and move it to a microcontroller on like an ID card that has none of the frameworks, none of the things that you're used to using that give you shortcuts. And then you have to memory allocation. You have to get really, really specific. And so the second big thing I've learned is that when I really care about something, I really need to know about it, I need to roll up my sleeves and I can't just take somebody else's word for it. And so in responsibility for AI, one of the things we've done is surface tools now that as people are using these machine learning models, they can start seeing scoring and they can start seeing output without pushing it to production. They can ask themselves, like, as a brand, is this what we want? Are we comfortable with this? They can modify some of the parameters to see, and this comes from our history again of deploying at scale and YouTube and content moderation. There's so many things behind the scenes, but we had to roll up our sleeves and figure it out ourselves. And now we want to empower others to roll up their sleeves and figure it out for themselves too, and figure out the solution that works for them.
Awesome. There's a lot of interactions that I've had with many of our customers, right, or users of Google Cloud, where they want to be in control in a sense, right? You give me this information, you tell me how I can use this. So it's great to hear that we are making, it's something that we have learned, but we're also making this information available to them where they can see for themselves, how we are actually handling responsible AI and how they can use it responsibly. So that's great to hear. I just want to change track to go a little bit into the career side of things, right? I know a lot of folks here heard about your background, are excited to see how they can upskill and up-level themselves. Now, a lot of people that I've spoken with are excited about IT, right? They are non-IT tech professionals that we meet very often. They're excited by IT, especially with now this whole AI thing coming up. Even the IT folks, right? They want to change track. They want to get into this whole AI world. You have come from this background, right? Where you've been in the army and then you have come into tech. And you did have a background in math, in the foundational parts of machine learning. What else did you have to do in terms of reinventing yourself? What advice would you give to others, right? Where they have to move, let's say, tracks from a non-tech background to being a part of technology. What kind of learning path can they think about themselves? How do they re-educate themselves? Any advice for them?
Sure. And I'm just going to echo, like at the high level, I would say, find a problem you care a lot about and roll up your sleeves and start experimenting. And we are living in a time now where the barriers to trying something is so low. There's so many free courses out there. So for example, one of the hottest roles out there right now is prompt engineering. That doesn't require a degree in computer science. Doesn't require any degree at all. And if you think about like what it takes to be a really good prompt engineer, like we're all figuring this out right now. So by wading into it, and there are courses popping up. Google Cloud is starting to codify learning paths for generative AI as well that are open and available. By the way, I've taken them, even though I'm supposed to be an expert. I'm already on the learning path for generative AI, online, and it's good. you can go and get the information you want. One of the failure modes that I've seen over time is people ask the question like, what should I learn? And they try to find like the best specific technology or specific area. And that's like betting, there's like a 1 in 1,000 chance you get it right. Now, maybe you could say AI generally is pretty safe and robust, or maybe cloud, maybe mobile 5 years ago, or maybe cybersecurity. But I would encourage people to think about the problems they care the most about. Those problems that really annoy you. So sometimes it's like friction on online, purchasing. Some of the best companies have come out of, people's experience and frustration with products, and then just not letting go of solving that problem themselves, and then go roll your sleeves up and give it a shot. And prompt engineering is one of those that I think is going to be around for a while. I think that's general consensus is that large language models are going to need many people and many perspectives, whether it's in an industry, a geography, the nuances of being in those markets, and that doesn't require any degree at all.
Awesome. Hope some of you take that advice to heart. From the non-tech folks, right? Or maybe this applies even to folks who have not been in IT, and then even the folks who are currently in the IT field. There is just so much that's changing in the IT landscape, right? There are so many new technology trends. The last 6 to 9 months have been ablaze with new technologies, new concepts coming in. People have had to adapt to this. Cloud is growing rapidly, right? So adoption of cloud, the number of services, products, features on cloud. How does one keep themselves up to date? How does one upskill themselves and stay relevant?
Well, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's hard. And good luck to all of you, because I struggle with this myself. I have to create very disciplined time in my schedule. I have to pick, can't be everything. So again, going back to things that if you're naturally interested in something and you naturally care about something, you will put in the time to learn it. If you're just doing it because someone told you to do it, you'll bail out at some point, and you will probably regret all of that wasted time. From a trends perspective, I would also encourage you not to try to read crystal balls. I'm the CTO of a pretty big organization, and I am the first to admit that I can't predict the future. Instead, I create mechanisms to listen very, very carefully to the early rumblings of activity, try to connect some dots, and then I jump in and we experiment. So kind of waiting for the perfect scenario probably isn't a great strategy, but also expecting. It's almost like a mindset shift that it's going to be a path of discovery. And in a lot of ways, AI is this way. When you first tune a model and you start working with its outputs, I would be shocked if any of you get the results that are ready for production. You have to take these results. You have to look at what guardrails you may need, or what refinements you may need, or what other data corpuses you may want to add to fine tune, and it's go again, and go again, and go again. And if it makes any of you out there feel any better, I had no idea I would ever become the CTO of an organization like this. Candidly, it was never a goal that I wrote down on a piece of paper or on a sticky note. But I was always passionate about service. I always wanted to help other people. I was always naturally curious about technology. And I've always been open to the idea that I am not the subject matter expert on any given topic. And those three things somehow have combined over a period of time with kind of a let's try it and see approach from a leadership perspective. And that's worked out okay.
Awesome.
I also, as an aside, there's also this, I think there's this concept of like tech versus non-tech. And I'd like to pop that bubble.
Sure.
Right now. And that is that we have seen people in Google, in prior companies, in prior organizations, we've seen people with liberal arts degrees, no degrees, come up with an idea or connect a dot that unleashed all of the value in a project we were working on. And so hopefully we also don't take these labels of tech versus non-tech and apply them to ourselves. Hopefully you don't apply them to yourself either. You just think of I like to think of myself as a technologist, a problem solver, and a curious person. And maybe that mindset will open up, the willingness to try. Because I've been at this for a couple decades. There is no time like this one where more tools and more knowledge is available to every single person if they believe that they can do something, and they're willing to try.
Awesome. I think that's a very valuable point, right? Being tech or non-tech, there's a difference from being somebody who writes code, right? Technology is about using tools to solve problems, to satisfy your needs.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think that's a very good distinction you bring about. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
It's like you read my mind, but you did talk about, you spoke about being a CTO.
Well, I just said I can't tell the future, and so now I guess.
Yeah. So there are, again, a lot of folks here who, we spoke about the folks who want to, let's say, move into certain technologies, or adopt certain technologies. But there are also a good bunch of senior developers in the audience.
Absolutely.
Right? And many of these folks want to become technology leaders, and in fact, I've heard that many of them want to grow into the role of a CTO.
That's fantastic.
Which is what you are. So I have
maybe one of them will be sitting here in this chair someday.
Yeah, maybe.
I hope so.
And I would love to be interviewing them. So let's start with the role of a CTO itself. You are the CTO for Google Cloud, and you run the office of the CTO. Octo is such a cool name, by the way.
Well, you have to have, if you're ever going to start a team, there's two things you need. You need an acronym, Octo, Office of the CTO, and you need a mascot. And it just so happens that Octo lends itself really well to have an octopus mascot. And so the branding was crucial in the early days.
Awesome. What does Octo do?
We do three things, and this has evolved over time. When we first started the team, and when I first started the team 7-8 years ago, and thanks to, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Brian Stevens, who was the first CTO of Google Cloud, and he and our CEO at the time, and like Urs Holzler, our SVP of engineering, they recognized that there was a gap between the technology of Google and the aspirations of companies, and there was a communications gap. There was a bridge that wasn't built yet, because when you're a CTO, of a consumer brand, or you're a CTO of a media company, and you're thinking about moving, to the cloud, and think about deploying services, that's a big bet, and it creates a relationship that could be many years, and kind of in its substance. And so what's been really important has been the kernel of the idea, which is the bridge between customers and Google's technology, and figuring out how to, these first ofs, like streaming analytics for the first time in retail. It was actually a really hard problem to solve. And so working with a couple of our early customers to unlock, how data flow actually works, or maybe they want to use Beam and kind of manage it themselves, wrap it themselves. We started out as a team to help get over those kind of first bumps to cloud. And over the years, we've evolved because the business has evolved and the market's evolved. So now we do primarily three things, but we've kind of shifted the focus a little bit. So I would say in the past, it was roughly 80% work with top customers, and then 20% share what we're learning. And over the last 3 or 4 years, what we've noticed is when you work with the top, couple hundred customers and partners around the world, every geo, every layer of the stack, every industry, you start to spot common problems, common needs. But there was nowhere for us to take it. So we created a mechanism over the last few years where we call them emerging themes. And we take those dots, right, that we're trying to connect. And we have now the team, the office of the CTO, what we do roughly 60-70% of our time is taking those dots and trying to catalyze them and get the organization moving on a really hot topic. So Web3, for example, was a service that wasn't offered in GCP up until just a year or two ago, but that was something that we had been working on for 3 or 4 years, from a distributed ledger. How would that work on Google Cloud? We started something, we spun it out into a product area that's now in another part of cloud. And so we added this new mechanism of taking what we learn and what we observe and nudging, hopefully, the organization every once in a while on something that's really useful and really transformative. And other examples are like precision health, which, if you think about generative AI plus search plus, like access to insurance networks and all, you could imagine a world not too distant future where someone is wondering, has a question about something and is prompted, oh, you're asking a question about this. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need additional services? Can I connect you with this? And actually having almost like a concierge medicine, precision medicine capability. Those are the types of things that we work on now. And we still work with our top customers, right? That hasn't stopped. But we really shifted our focus to make sure that Google and Google Cloud have some early warning signs of things that could be very transformative for us and for our customers.
Got it. Nice. And the second part of the question around the whole CTO, what you do, are folks that do want to grow into this career as a CTO. You mentioned what you do, right? So that sort of connects the dots, right? This is what you expect to be doing out of this role.
Yeah.
How can they grow into this role? How do they level themselves up from being developers or senior developers? Maybe they are folks who are designing systems, but how do they take themselves to the next level and maybe put themselves on the path to becoming a CTO?
Sure. A couple of things that I think were really important moments. Number one is after you build a lot of things over time, you start to understand, and I think you gain the knowledge of how to construct systems, people, processes, and tools to deliver products, in bigger scale. And so I could not be a CTO if I hadn't built anything. So you got to get out there and build products, build companies, build teams, and it takes time. CTO, and this is from the lens of CTO of kind of a large organization like this, whereas CTO of a startup is a little bit different gig. It's probably a little bit more on the dev side, a little bit more hands-on, whereas, in a big company like ours, CTO is kind of more of the strategy and kind of the next investments. So it'll be nuanced by kind of if they desire to be a startup CTO or a large company CTO. But certainly you have to get out there and build. And then the other big moment or the other big shift is you really have to love people as much as you love the technology. And I will tell you, for all the things I've ever built, companies, technologies, there's I'm almost getting choked up thinking about the people that I've had in my team that have gone on, they've spent time in our team and then they've gone on to be the chief digital officer of a massive telco, or they've gone on to be the head of engineering for a product area, or they've gone to start their own company, or they're right now working on another emerging theme for Google Cloud. If you have that love of actually watching teams of people accomplish a goal, and you've built a lot of stuff, I think you're well on your way to being a CTO.
Amazing. I know what conversation I need to have with my manager in the next discussion. Awesome.
You're not going to quote me directly, are you?
No,
go ahead. It's fine.
Awesome. So, Will, this has been amazing, but I also want to look at some of the audience questions that are coming in from the folks who are listening to this. So we have some of the things that you have been asking about, and maybe I'll ask that to you, Will. So there's one thing that's coming out a lot, which is, what advice do you have folks that want to start a career in cloud?
Well, one, I like Google Cloud. So, feel free to, we have a jobs.google.com. I mean, I think that I don't know the exact URL off the top of my head, but I guarantee you we can, there are quite a few roles, especially in Google Cloud, open right now. So, that's one. I find quite often we self-select out, like we'll add a filter to ourselves that maybe we're not qualified or something for a job. So one is I would scan what's out there. That's the best, the fastest way to get started is there's something available and, it's pretty close. You feel like it's maybe even, somewhat close to what you do already. Second, there are a number of learning paths and a number of free education courses that are available, whether you're more of a developer, an analyst, program manager, whatever skill area you most identify with, I can almost guarantee you that there is a Google learning path, Google Cloud learning path, or even just general learning path for cloud out there. And I think it's a pretty good time to bet on Google Cloud. Obviously, I'm biased, but empirically, at the rate of growth for Google Cloud and the leadership position in machine learning, our history of cloud native design, development, multi-cloud, security, there's a reason why we are able to bring and attract the talent that we have here is because many of our customers, if not all of them, believe that we're at least in the leadership conversation for all of those topics and more. So I would also encourage you to think about Google Cloud, and give us a shot.
Awesome. And are you sure you cannot read the future? Because the very next question is already answered by you. So folks are asking about, where can they learn about jobs at Google and how can they identify internship or employment opportunities? You did mention the jobs at google.com.
Yep, absolutely. That is absolutely the fastest way. One of the unusual things about Google versus other companies I've been in is we actually post all of our roles externally. So there's no secret. There's no secret role that we're holding on to. No, they're all there. And so if you see something or an area that you're interested in, and I've had to pitch my way into roles in the past before, give it a shot. And you'll also, one of the great things about looking at job roles, job categories, and or even like university relations. Most universities have relationship with Google, so there are programs at almost any university that you can imagine out there. But there are these paths, and what you can see is the types of requirements and qualifications that are preferred by a company like Google, and it's also a very efficient way to like problem solve on gaps. So maybe I don't know SQL, but I really want to be a BI analyst. Well, SQL is probably not a bad thing for you to invest your time in. And my guess is most, BI analyst jobs, you're going to see something in there around, structured data, SQL, or something like it. So, by taking this inventory, in fact, I do a lot of resume coaching. One of the things I do is I say, take the job description, turn it into a sheet, which actually is becoming much easier now. Thank you, Generative AI. So you take it, you turn it into a sheet, and you just next to each one of the qualifications or each next to each of the statements that says, like SQL, like we just talked about, you can go and do a quick inventory against where you're strong and where you wouldn't be strong. And maybe it's not that job, but maybe there's one that shows up just like it, because it's also a nice indicator of trends where we're hiring too.
Yeah, awesome. And you could probably also ask generative AI to help you with upskilling on those areas where you don't have a match.
Well, absolutely, and I encourage everybody to, that Google Labs is, is experimental, it's out there, and so you're able to actually, some of you in early access, if you've been signing up, you can start to experience these things, and generative AI kind of with search, kind of in the same pain, and this is, what we showed recently at I/O, and it's really cool to have this conversational interface plus like all of the trail and provenance and sources right next to it. It really decreases like your number of clicks and your number of scrolls and your number of windows that you need to have open.
Awesome. So we'll take one more question that's coming in from the audience.
Great.
There are seem to be a lot of startups in the audience. And the question that's coming out a lot is, how is Google Cloud helping startups? What are we doing with startups?
Well, we have a number of accelerator programs. We have a number of incubation programs. There will be more coming soon that I think are really going to be exciting for all of you out there. But even just a quick search on, Google Cloud accelerators, Google Cloud for startups, just some very simple web searches will get you right to places where, very generous credit programs, in some cases, joint go-to-market to help you get your product out there, marketplace, and and Google Cloud is another great place to get more exposure for cutting-edge technology built with and around Google Cloud. So there's just I can definitely empathize with the startups out there because there are so many resources. But I think look for keywords that you might want to look for. Our accelerators, Google Cloud for startups, and stay tuned because more in the not too distant future on this topic. I have a feeling there will be more news soon.
Yeah, no, awesome. And to add to that again, we do have a lot of these startup programs, right? So startups at google.com is someplace where you can go find out more about this. As Will said, use the keywords on Google search. You will land where you need to be.
And I'm not just trying to drive web traffic. It's just really efficient.
Yeah. And there are a lot of webinars that we do as well for startups. So there's a startup school that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Look for Startup Academy. Go to cloudonair.withgoogle.com, search for Google Cloud events, and you'll find a lot of these things that we are doing for startups where we're helping startups be more successful and adopt Google Cloud.
Yeah.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much for here. Before we end, one final question. You are doing a lot. You are extremely busy. How do you take time to yourself? What does me time look like for you?
Well, right now it's all about my family. So any free minute that I have, I try to spend with my daughters, Hannah and Kate, just in case they're out there on the live stream, and my wife, Trish. Family for me has always been my top priority. And actually, it motivates me a lot as a technologist to try to solve problems because it's some of these conversations happen at the dinner table. But any free moment that I have, I'm watching My youngest plays soccer, football, association football. I'm speaking with my oldest, who is right now on her going to be a junior in college, and so she's filling me in on maybe potential majors or really locking in on what she wants to do for a living. And those are the moments that fill me back up, or interactions with my family. It's like the last thing I look at before I come and do an event like this. I always take a look at a picture of my family because in the end it's all for them.
Lovely. That's great to hear, Will. And I do hope this is your first visit to India. So the next time I do hope you come over with your family, show them India as well, and you take some time in India.
Absolutely. Maybe next time we'll switch and I'll get to ask you all the questions.
Oh, no. I'm going to start sweating already. No, thank you, Will. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I've learned a lot from this conversation as well. So it's been really great. And I hope all of you got some good insights from Will. Thank you all for joining us, being a part of us for a little bit about 45 minutes now. So thank you, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.